Hello, it's May 28th, 2024. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that is been on my mind for quite a while, that God has been putting on my mind and has been stirring and getting me to think about at a deeper level. As you can see from the title, we're talking about success. We're talking about the idea of what is success and what is man's idea of success versus God's idea of success. So we're going to go into that a little bit, and I'm just going to share some of the deeper thoughts that God has put on my mind and how I see what happens in the world versus what God is looking for, and the things I've learned as I've learned to walk with Him. And I've learned to follow His directions and trust in Him, not my ideas, not the world's ideas, and in conjunction, not the ideas of Christian religion, the programmed and routine, doctrinalized practices and beliefs that become our boxes that we operate from and our lists of good things that we do. So let's think about this word success. It's ingrained in us, in everything we do, from our basest of needs and wants all the way up into the higher functions that we do in life, work that we do, hobbies, anything that we do in life. As I said, from that base needs and desires, that we need food and we need water and we need shelter in order to survive. We approach everything from we need to be successful and we desire to be successful, meaning that we have gained the thing we want and need. That could be our most basic understanding of what is success. I'll say it again, we have gained what we want and need. If there's something that we desire, our success is defined by whether or not we obtain that. And there is an element of time that comes into our discerning of what is success and how about we go being successful. Time pushes us, it drives us. We have finite time that we must work within. And we see that from a worldly perspective. We see that we only have a short period of time with which to work with. So when we want something, say it's a basic need, we need food and water. We are limited by very short durations of time, that we must obtain the food and water very quickly. We can live without shelter in many ways, and various ways of providing shelter, but it is also limited by time. We need to obtain something in a relative quick period of time. So we look at success from, did we get what we want or needed, and did we get it in a time frame that is appropriate and logical? So if we say, I need food and water, but I didn't get it until 3 weeks later, well, our bodies would have shut down by then, especially in concerning water. We would have shut down. We did not succeed because we did not get what we wanted and needed in an appropriate time frame. So let's think about that. We have our idea of success. Did we get what we wanted and needed? And then we think about God's definition of success. So we're going to develop that. What is God's definition of success? And how does that play out in what we see in the world, what we see in ourselves, which, let's remember, we are tainted from the beginning. We are tainted from the beginning. We moved from the only thing that we understood was God and the environment that He created for us. Everything was successful without any of our effort, without any of our understanding. Adam and Eve were born into perfection, and they had the full presence of God with them. That in itself was success. There was no drive for anything they wanted or needed. They were simply living in the perfection and the presence of God. So once they fell, once they began to desire or be deceived to believe that that was not enough, being in God's presence, following His directions, doing daily as He said, was not the height of success. What they needed was to know more, to know the facts, so to speak. And then from there, their curse, our curse, is that we manage that. We manage good and evil. And what we have now is success is based on, did we work hard enough? Did we understand hard enough? Did we study hard enough? Did we manage good and evil for a positive outcome? Now, you may have never thought of that before, or taken it to that deep of a level. And we don't often do that. And that's why I've said that this has been sitting in my mind, and God's been keeping it there and meditating on this idea of success for quite some time. And God often brings me all the way back to the beginning of the story and shows me this is where everything came from. This is how it continues to play out. And we, generation after generation, will start over and repeat errors, and we will repeat cycles over and over again, not understanding that we are making the same mistakes. So, let's look at what God's definition of success is. His definition of success is faith, trust, connection to Him, doing what He says. I'm going to say that again, and I believe that you will understand this. You have to understand this. When we have a God perspective, we must immediately realize that is what God is looking for. Without faith, it is impossible, I'll say that word, impossible, to please Him. So take that truth, and now try to bring our definition of success in. We go out and we try to attain things, build things, create things, manage things, administer things for ourselves to better the world, to do more good and less evil. And we try to do things for God based on that management. Well, we're going to do good things. We have a list of good things, and this is the output. We want to do something for God. We want to create something for God. We want to build a church. We want to do missions. We want to evangelize. We want to build Christianity. Those are the things that we are surrounded by in our Christian religion. So, we still carry with us that definition of success. So we look at the output. We say, we are going to do this for God, and this is the success that we have built a church. We have added numbers. We have had people pray a salvation gospel prayer. We have gone out and we have preached. We have gone out and we have given. Any number of things. We have controlled our behavior. We have done less sin than we have previously. And we look at that and we say, we are successful because we have done those things. But if there is no faith in that, if there is no connection to God in those things at all, and there is no obedience to God's specific direction as Lord and Shepherd. Now, a lot of Christians, most Christians, will not understand this because there is an inherent understanding that God isn't so involved with us anymore. This idea of his active leading as Lord and Shepherd is filtered or mediated or ceased even based on what denomination of Christianity we are talking about. There's different levels of where we think God is and how we think he works and how involved we believe he is. So if you look across denominations of Christianity, you'll see all different levels, all different understandings of how much God is involved. And as I said, you'll see many people will say, well, God gives us his word, meaning the Bible, where we get the principles and the facts and the truth. And all we do is manage those and implement those now. We are at a commandment level, law-based level in those areas. Then we kind of can move into, well, yeah, we have to manage our behavior, we have to manage our good works, and we have the directions in the Bible, and God steps in every now and then to answer our prayers or do the things that we can't do. So, and then it goes up into other levels where there's more faith, supposedly, either spoken or signs and wonders in charismatic and Pentecostal areas. So there's different levels of how we think God moves and acts. So, but what I'm talking about is real faith, real connection, real trust, real relationship. Like the disciples had, like Jesus called his disciples to walk with him. So, I'll say it again. God desires faith. He desires trust. He desires obedience to his direct, specific directions for us. That is success. What the ultimate output is not how we gauge success in God's eyes. Now that may sound crazy to us. Again, that is true because we have a very humanistic, worldly based definition of success. Just stop and process that for a moment and realize that God said if we do something that God says for us to do, that is successful. That is obedience. That displays faith. What result comes of that is God's sovereignty. He says we are successful because we have obeyed, we have trusted. Now let me give you an example from Scripture, from our historical records of those that walked with God. We can first talk about the prophets. The prophets went to Israel. They spoke for God. They listened to him. And he said, all you have to do is speak. If you do not speak what I tell you to tell them, you have failed and their blood will be held against you. If you do speak, then you have done what I've told you to do. You will not be responsible for the result of what happens to them. The prophets were speaking for God, telling them often that judgment is coming. You are going the wrong direction, Israel. You are my people. You have taken in idols. You are joining with the world. You are deciding for yourselves what is success, what is God's will. And their job, the prophet's job, is to speak and say, no, you are going the wrong direction. God is going to bring judgment. He's going to scatter you. He's going to tear down your systems, and he is going to scatter you. So think about the prophets. Their success was not based on whether or not Israel repented and obeyed. Their success was defined on, did they speak what God told them to speak? Let's think about the disciples and Jesus. The disciples, we look back at from a historical long time in the future, and we look back with a success mindset. We say, oh, they started the evangelism. They were the first to take the gospel, to take Jesus's words and begin to make disciples. Yes, that is true. That was the start. But we must go back and realize that their obedience to God led them to places that at their time was not successful in the way that we understand. The disciples met great suffering and pain and persecution, and they scattered. Many disciples fell away from Christ. They walked with him until some point that they could not understand, they could not fathom in their mind what Jesus was saying anymore, and they left. We know that there were more than 12 disciples. There were a group of disciples, and many of them fell away. And when Jesus was brought to the time of crucifixion, he was essentially alone in the garden, just him and God, and he sweat drops of blood of what he was to suffer and how he was essentially to die alone. His ministry was only 3.5 years long, that we understand. And yes, he did many miracles, and he received many people and spoke to many people who believed in him. They saw his miracles, but very few understood who he was. Now, Jesus could have come to this earth and spoken a message that made more sense to the religious leaders, to Israel, that was more palatable to them. And he could have made them understand, but Jesus often spoke in parables, and he spoke in ways that made people angry and made people go, I don't get what you're saying. Jesus spoke what the Father told him to speak, and he spoke in ways that were not successful for the multitude. Jesus did not come and start Christian religion, which today looks like it is successful because it is everywhere. Christianity, in thousands of different forms, is everywhere, on every street corner, so to speak, in all of the countries, and it is somewhat successful. In fact, quite successful, because if you look at the percentage of Christians worldwide, Christianity has taken a firm foundation in the world. But Jesus did not create Christian religion. He did not start Christian religion. He started a process of discipleship. So we cannot look at the success of Christianity and the power and the influence that it has in this world and compare that to what Jesus came to do and what his path is, his narrow path. He said when he returns, will he find anyone with faith? He was speaking ahead, saying that very few will be my disciples. That is not successful. Jesus died on a cross alone. His disciples had scattered. Peter was even in the greatest of doubt and fear. And the disciples carried this. They were persecuted. They were not successful in this sense that we in Christianity see them to be. from a way back looking perspective. Disciples are few and far between. The success of what they started is not what we understand it to be. So, as you, if you decide to follow as a disciple, just as Jesus said, you must follow his directions. He will give directions in your life. He will put you through situations that are meant to train and change your very nature. I've experienced it. And he will lead us to places that do not look successful. Like the prophets. Let's look at Joseph and David. They were given a prophecy of what they would become, what God would make them to be, what places he would lead them to. But instead of going in a very timely fashion, a logical fashion towards the very successful end goal that he had for them and their purpose, they went an opposite direction. They went into hiding, they went into prison, they went into pain and suffering, and that is not the success that we understand. They must have looked at their position. Joseph in prison, Joseph in a pit, Joseph in places that were the exact opposite of where God was going to eventually elevate him to. David in a cave being hunted, looking at his life saying, wow, this is not successful. This is not going the direction in a timeline that I can see as successful. So God will put us in those places. And I can tell you, when God gave me the idea for ministry, after having been laid off from a job that I thought was God's last, final, long-term career goal for me, I was laid off, and God then gave me an idea for ministry, which was crazy to me. I said to myself, I can't do this. I'm not a professional. I don't speak. I don't have this charismatic, outgoing, extroverted personality. All I wanted was a good job. I just wanted to make it in this world and expect God to provide all the success in short order. So God gave the idea for ministry, and I waited almost a year before I did anything with it, because there was great difficulty that came upon me, like Joseph experienced when he went around and told the people around him what God's plan was. Joseph immediately was mocked and persecuted for what his plan would be, and so was David. As soon as people knew what God had said your goal and your plan will be, they were persecuted. That happened to me as well. And God put it on my heart to take a step towards this ministry vision a year after he had given it to me. And I did. And I started a website, and I began to put little pieces in place. And I said, okay, God, here it is. This is what you've asked me to do. And I expected God to bring very quick success, logical success, that all of a sudden he would start to bring and put things in place. But to my surprise, God did not. I did what he had asked me to do, but the success that I expected, that people around me who were watching expected that success, and I'm talking about Christians. I came from a very devout Christian, church-going, institutional, denominational background. And I proclaimed this big thing, that God was going to start this ministry, and he was going to bring all the provision we needed for it. And that did not happen. I sat there for years with a website going, and I just had to keep doing it. And never did I see, at that time, anything come from it. And I had to fight like Noah building the ark, just continuing to do little pieces, continuing to wait and trust, and to keep doing what God said to do. There was no ultimate big success. And even as I make this video, 12 years later, God still has me and Shannon now in a waiting and training process and a testing process. He is still doing personal things in our lives, putting us through trials and some fire, seeing little by little, do you have faith? Are you continuing to do what I told you to do? Are you waiting months, years for the next direction that I have for you? Will you give up? So it's vital to understand that God will put us in places that do not look successful, but God defines what is success. Not us, not our timelines, not our methods to achieve success, because I can tell you what we do in Christian religion is we take in the ways of the world and we match them with God's principles. We say, God wants this to happen, a good thing, ministry, evangelism, care, good works, good behavior, worship, church, and then we take in the ideas of how to make those things happen. Logical, worldly ways of how to do church, how to do ministry, how to do acts of kindness and charity, how to set up church. We bring all man's world's ways in and we say, this is how we're supposed to do it. This is what leads to success. And we never stop and we say, God, what do you want? What is your timeline? How do you define success? And that is how we repeat the errors of Israel, the errors of the religious leaders. How we take control of God's work, and most of us don't even understand we've done it. So I'm telling you, I am operating. I'm not just putting this out there as an idea. I'm telling you, I've lived it. That God says your success is not defined by whether or not you go out and make this ministry happen. Your success is defined on, do you get up and speak what I say to speak? Do you wait when I tell you to wait? Do you have faith and trust month after month, year after year, keeping focused on what that end goal that I told you will come? Now, I don't know what that ultimate result will be and how effective it will be. I'm just going to do it the way God says to do it, when He says to do it. Because I have learned this principle of success. He's taught it to me through very, very hard circumstances. Otherwise, I would have done what the Christian people around me would have told me to do. When I first had an idea for ministry, they liked the idea, my Christian counselors, be it pastors, church, friends, and family. They thought it was a nice idea, but they said, oh, you got to do it this way. You got to bring it to you got to institutionalize it. You got to make it a 501c3. You've got to go out and get funding, and you've got to make sure that you have a business, institutional, administrative, programmed way of carrying this out that is logical and under the standard of what Christian religion understands is God's way. And God firmly told me, no, we're not going to do it that way. He works through people, not our wise methods to bring what we think is success in a timely fashion. See, a timely fashion would be that within short order, this ministry would get up and rolling, and we would see the fruit of funding come in, and people would start to back it and join, and people would be in agreement with it, other Christians. That never happened. And God said, keep going, keep trusting. Your success is based on, do you do what I tell you to do? So I had to learn that hard lesson. And in fact, I had to shut the original website down for many reasons. And God was using that first step of obedience to work things out personally in other circumstances. I began to see the evils of religion by starting that website. I gained an education and a training from having done this one step of faith. The fruit of the ministry wasn't supposed to start yet. But what I did there, God worked in a much bigger picture. And God was working success, and still is to this day. So a disciple must understand that, as I've said, and I'll say it again, that one step is our success. What God does is His working, and because He sees everything, He sees not only the people and the circumstantial things that are going on around us in this time frame, He sees in the past, He sees in the future. It's an amazing thing when we begin to be trained to understand that in a real way. We say it with our lips, that yes, God sees everything, and in certain ways we just generally give up control to Him, but He will make it specific. And 5 years down the road, all of a sudden He will make it clear to us, this is why I had you do this 5 years ago, because this is the result now. It is flat out amazing. And it's those moments where you go, wow, God, you just blew my mind. So many examples could be given of this, and lots of talk could be had over this idea of success. But I wanted to bring this message to you and get you to think about God's definition of success versus our definition of success. Whether it be man or Christian religion, which is man-controlled, man-centered, still integrating our humanistic ideas with God's general principles. Come away from that. Begin to understand and seek God for what is His success. That is the first, one of the major foundational things that we can grasp as a disciple. That, oh, we put this down, we put this away. We start to see with this. We start to see with God's eyes and His perspective. It's completely different. And it's amazing. And our success, your success, if you choose to follow God as a disciple, is, have you done what God has said to do? Whether or not you see any fruit or any other Christian around you or person around you sees anything from what you just did, one step of obedience, it makes no difference. Christians around you will mock and question and doubt all the time, because they see God as, well, God will do this, and He'll do this, and He'll do this, and He'll do this. It's all logic, it's all linear, it is all humanistic, and it is just system of wisdom. God does not think like we think, and you'll see it when you start to follow his directions. He will have you follow a direction which you go, that is sending me in the opposite direction, like Joseph and David. God will put us in those times. I can tell you right now, as I make this video, God has directed Shannon and I to step out in a certain area of faith where we have believed that God would bring more finances, more provision in that area, and begin to bring us out of a season of lack, purposeful lack and purposeful waiting in a very confined situation where we've had to learn to be content and to stop complaining and stop grumbling. And we have believed in the last few months and made decisions that we are going to step out in more faith. And right now, it looks like we are going the opposite direction. And that is where we have to go back and remember whether or not we have made anything out of this, whether or not we get the result that we want, which means God is providing more for us for ministry reasons. We want to go out and begin to interact with people, provide more assistance and help, and bring the gospel to people, the real message of discipleship to people. We have seen very, very little fruit in that area. And right now, we have spent all our money in faith, believing that God is going to provide more. And right now, for the last number of days, it looks like God is not showing up. But we made that decision. We took those steps. Whether or not we have that fruit at the moment, we are successful because we have trusted God. And it hurts a little bit right now, and it looks like, oh, this isn't going well. I don't see the fruit. My logic says I need to turn back, to stop. This is not successful. It's a test from God. And he reminds me, you have done what I've asked you to do. It's in a powerful, powerful understanding, and completely the opposite of the way we think and how we were twisted to think from way back when. So I hope this message hits you as a viewer and gets you to think of God differently, and to get you to want to seek after God and to develop this. God, what is your will? What is success to you? Help me to put away all of my fleshly understandings, all of the ways of the world and Christian religion, the boxed-in, programmed Christian religion has caused me to see you. What is your success? What do you want me to do? We must give up our lives and look to him and say, God, my life is yours. That is the path of discipleship, and success is in his hands, not our ideas, not our methods. I hope that you will prayerfully consider this as you listen and seek God in this area. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again for another video soon. Thank you.